Met with Zach for the first time. So, we're just trying to do as much due diligence as we can. I think what folks have to understand about our process is we are at step 1 of 35. Is that what I had yesterday, Christine? Is that we have 35 different steps before a certificate of occupancy would be issued for a data center in Emporia. So, we are trying to do as much education. This is where we want good public education. I will tell, we had a public hearing 10 days ago. Lux spoke at that. But, I'm not a note taker. Anybody knows me, I'm not a note taker. But the mental note that I took from that, somebody talked about what happens when they close. And that was a big note for me, and that registered with me. And I've done some research that they are doing things in agreements about when facilities close, either doing bonding or some sort of promises. So we are looking for those very much tangible things that we can learn at this point to learn about. There's a lot of success that we see down here, especially with the school system. But, we want to know those failures that we see too. We want to know how to prevent the failures. And if you're saying you're doing Bitcoin mining, thanks, but no thanks. We are looking for, as I say, I think it's called the Magnificent Seven businesses now. That's your Amazon, Google, Meta. That's who we're looking at for this facility. We want somebody who is going to be as good or better than Google.
Where are you guys at relative to where El Dorado is with exploring this? Because essentially it's kind of a race.
Us and El Dorado. So El Dorado kind of jumped out, and they started working on their zoning regulations without having a site identified. We wanted to have, because that's the hard thing, is when you go out and say, hey, where's this going? What does this mean? So we, our standard is we don't announce projects in Emporia unless the developer has asked us to announce a project or they're to the point that they need to start going through some sort of regulatory approval process. So, we are doing everything kind of as one step, where they're having the early conversations which have seen all of this transparency stuff. This is never going to be as open book just because we don't have all the answers. But, I think El Dorado has some idea of how things are going to play out. We know exactly what land they're talking about as we work through it. So they're kind of different processes, but I would say we're very similar in the timeline.
High water volume users.
What?
Can you talk about the high water volume users?
Sure. So right now, we have had conversations between, initially we were asked for 4 million gallons a day. And we said that was not doable for us. 2.5 is currently what we feel comfortable with, or about 1 billion gallons a year. 2.7 is 1 billion gallons a year. But 2.5 is that's our comfortable number right now. There are some things we can do to get to a higher number, either through plant improvements, or our largest customer has said that there are things that they could do to lower their consumption, and that they would potentially be willing to do that if they needed more water.
How much water was Tyson using?
So Tyson, when they were full slaughter in prior to 2008, was at 5 million gallons a day. So our system will do 15 million gallons a day. We have said 2.5 is a safe number based on consumption. Could we easily get to 5 for a project? Yes.
Is that including the natural gas that's going to be powering this?
I mean, that would be total load that we have said is a safe total load. My understanding with natural gas right now is that they will test once a month, and then obviously test once a month in emergencies, and then they will probably be asked in the summer at peak times, and we do this at the city between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. We will go to generator power at our civic auditorium just for those 2 hours in order to take load off the grid. So I would imagine you see a similar thing, maybe 10 days during the summer that they would be asked for about a 2-hour period to go to generation. And that's just based on what we see.
Are there plans in place to help offset what this digital campus will do to local usage of utilities such as water and power? Would it pull too much?
We think water consumption is safe. I mean, we are used to funding big users. And one of these, if you get a Bitcoin data center in a town of 2,500, they're going to suck up a lot of water, and that town is not used to providing industrial levels of water.
Right.
In Emporia, we are, Emporia is a 15 million gallon a day system. If we were a bedroom community, I grew up in Derby, Kansas. They're Wichita's largest customer, and I think they're 4.5 million gallons a day. And Derby is the same size as we are, but they're bedroom, no industrial. Where we're 15 MGD. Of course, we do supply rural Lyon County and part of Coffee County too.
Okay.
Other questions? On the power side, and I will answer the power side.
Yeah.
We get a lot of questions about power. At the end of the day, we're not in the power business. That is Evergy. Our conversations anecdotally is you don't see brownouts, and in fact, you're going to run new lines to bring more feeds into your community.
Okay.
But as far as electricity usage, that is not something we regulate. That is either regulated by the state of Kansas or the Kansas Corporation Commission.
Sure.
Jackie.
How do you envision it working? So a lot of that area where those tracks are actually on an REC and not Evergy. Is the intent to, campus develops out the
Yeah, so my understanding, and this is just first blush, or the conversation that I got asked is part of this campus is it Four Rivers Rural Electric Cooperative. Evergy can do one of two things. They can work out a trade deal with Four Rivers where they will trade some of their territory elsewhere for Four Rivers. Typically co-ops, they want to serve what they serve. So they're typically willing to trade that. The other one is, my understanding is, it's where the meter is. So if the meter would be on Industrial Park 4 and then you push north and you don't have a subsequent another meter, then that would all be Westar or Evergy. Anything else? Yeah. Oh, Jerry.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot of concern online.
Sorry, I just need to get it.
about
That's up there.
tax evasion. Some people use tax, sales tax, property tax. Would you clarify any of that?
Sure. So, okay, under Senate Bill 98, that is a sales tax abatement. So under Kansas law, 6.5% of your, in Emporia, we currently have 8.5% in sales tax. 6.5% of it goes to the state. 1% is the city tax, and 1% is a county-wide sales tax that Emporia gets about half of. So that would all be abated for the direct cost related to the facility. And you have to remember, labor in Kansas is already not subject to tax on construction, stuff like that. So it's going to be your materials that you would typically pay sales tax on, and it would be things like servers. So that sales tax is going to be abated for 20 years. So we would not receive any of that revenue. However, my understanding is anything that they would do outside the gate, so, go into restaurants, hotels, all that sort of stuff, would still be subject to sales tax in Emporia. Property tax in Kansas is really up to the local government on how we abate that. The conversations I've had with people is we don't know yet. If they were going to absolutely guarantee with some sort of financial instrument that they were going to create 2,000 jobs at 6 figures, we'd have to think really hard about a pretty heavy property tax abatement. Conversely, if it's what I've read on Facebook, it's 30 jobs, that's probably not worth a property tax exemption. Mm-hmm. So, I think it is seeing where we end up. It's seeing what they want to contribute to the local economy, how they want to help things out, and all of that. So let me kind of walk you guys through how the process is going to work if we continue to proceed. So remember, we can stop at any time. If we stop, we're done. We get off the bus, we're out of the game. If we continue down, then we can go through potentially all 35 steps. But the plan is what they're trying to get to is what they call entitled land, where they basically have a data center watch. If we're familiar with tornado watch, tornado warning in Kansas, they have all the ingredients assembled for a data center, as far as land, as far as electricity, as far as water, as far as zoning, and all that stuff. And then the guy, Gary Pinkston, I'm sure you guys have read a little bit about him online, but he is a shopping center developer by trade. So what really worked in my mind is to start thinking about this as a shopping center. And it may be like he gets one tenant. It may just be Costco takes up this, and that's all we have. It may be like we have Walmart, where you have 90% is Walmart, and then you have a little strip mall. That's what I'm hoping for, is that we see either a Costco model or a Walmart model versus, a bunch of little. I think that gets a lot harder if you just have a bunch of 12 different companies. So, but their plan, as I said, is to go out, shop it to one of the truly big 7, big 10 companies out there. And then once they get past zoning, so go back to those steps. So if they can get zoning cleared, get clear zoning regulations in place, then they will go out, they will shop that with the folks out there, hopefully get the absolute best deal for Emporia. Then we will engage probably a national law firm to come in, help us negotiate a development agreement. That development agreement is going to have all of the particulars people are asking about today. What's the tax abatement going to be? Will they agree to noise restrictions or potentially clawbacks on any incentives or anything that they have done? That's where demolition, bond, all those things would come in to a development agreement. Now, you don't get to a development agreement if you don't have things set up and you don't have an end user, at least talking to you. So we have no end user. We've had absolutely no conversation with an end user at this point. So a lot of those things I can't tell you. I can't tell you what the technology is going to be. Are they going to use 100% closed loop? Are they going to use what are they going to use? What I keep on going back to is, you guys got 2.5 million gallons of water a day. We can tell you how to get a little bit more, but that's our number. So if you can live within that, that's what we need. That's our town can still grow. Tyson could open back up, probably not as a kill operation. Of course, I don't foresee them opening it up as a kill operation again, but they could open back up what they were doing subsequent to the kill operation without a problem at 2.5 million gallons a day.
You probably addressed this in your answer to the other question, but are there going to be things built in to help control the raise of rates, such as like water bills, electricity bills, that sort of thing?
At the end of the day, we are working on a water use policy that should be out on Tuesday. So it will be in the packet on Tuesday. The commission's going to look at it in study session. They will not adopt it on Wednesday in study session. They will look at it, but the big thing with that is it says, one, they have to pay for all their direct costs. So, we just spent $21 million upgrading our infrastructure to serve the southeast portion of the city. If they need a big new line from the water plant, this is going to say that they're responsible for that cost, and they need to pay that cost up front.
Okay.
This is also going to pay, if they need improvements to the plant to serve them, they need to pay for those costs up front.
Okay.
My hope is everything we are doing here defrays and keeps us from having to. Let me be honest, guys. Water is going to have to go up. We have an $80 to $130 million water facility that we're going to have to pay for in the next 5 to 10 years. The only way we can pay for that's water rates. So if we have somebody else helping pay, if this bus was full and we passed around a hat and said we need to collect $100 in here. If this bus was full, it's going to be a little bit less than if the bus is half full.
Right.
So
That water improvement is coming whether or not.
yes. So, yes. And Angela asked about the water plant improvements. So our water plant is a Frankenstein water plant. Part of it goes back to 1916. We have added on to it. It makes the world's best water on good days. It makes barely legal water on bad days. And if everybody remembers Election Day 2024, we came out of standards. And that is just because we don't have enough detention time. If we get a heavy rain load after it's been dry, that's when we have the most problems. Is so much turbidity, all the dust and stuff washes into the creek, and that is incredibly hard to pull out the water before it hits your taps. So that is why we have to do this. And our plant also does not have key redundancies. We don't have any generators at the plant. So if we lose power at all, you know, we have about 2 hours to get the plant back online, or we're going to start seeing difficulty throughout the city. And as soon as we lose power, the northwest part of town will not have water at their homes because we do not have redundancy at the plant right now. And then we have a lot of key systems that do not have redundancy.
That's good to know.
All right, Jackie, did you have a question?
So I came on this bus now. I live in the county. One of the tracks is right across the
Jackie, I can't hear you.
a lot of people on the bus know that I live in the county, and one of those tracks is right across the road from me. And of course, everybody out there, when I say everybody, I would say it's a lot of people, you know, are very concerned about their property value. Right now, with this going on, if any of us tried to sell, I don't think we could sell our house. And probably half of us would, just because of the uncertainty. I know there's various data, but I mean, if you guys consider, you know, what that might do for the actual, I'm not talking about taxation, I'm talking about what my house is worth.
I mean,
on the market. I mean,
based on, I mean,
thought about-
developer, and I'm going to say it's developer provided study. So take that with what it is. They show that immediately surrounding data centers, from what their research shows, is that you see an increase in property tax. I'm not standing by that. I have not done my own research on that. You know, the question becomes, do you get, you know, if this were to happen, Jackie, where you live, I probably see somebody, I don't know that that's going to stay housing at that point. You know, it's going to be somebody, it may be like where we have lunch at the district, or, you know, something like that. So I don't know. You know, typically commercial industrial property sells for more than residential property, but I can't tell you. I've not done enough of my own research on
I
that.
just wondered if you knew that. And that's pretty, you know, it's pretty early on. That's for you guys to do that. So, the other question is, you know, you're talking about, you know, we're at this certain step, and if you get a developer, then you'll talk about some of the criteria, you know, cooling system, setbacks, you know, all of this. I mean, what can be done? What's the second thought in establishing some of those as part of the zoning?
The DIO does have setback. So there's two things. So going back to the 35 steps, the DIO does have setback requirements in it for all property. It also, so it's part of the requirement. So track 11, and I know that doesn't help you, Jackie, but track 11, is everybody familiar what track 11 is? It's the
Yeah.
peak property north of Jones Aquatic Center.
Yeah.
Track 11 is being, the proposal for track 11 is a different proposal than the other 10. So lots 1 through 10, that is, they have requested light industrial there. That does have some setback requirements, you know, in that on industrial flex, which is peak, it requires a planned unit development. So what that means is that at that point, before that plot of land can be developed, they have to go back through commission, and they have to show, planning commission and commission, and show exactly where everything's going to be laid out, where the berms are going to be, where the trees are going to be, where each building's going to be. All those things have to be set back, and that's something, yeah, Kenton can tell you, that's something on other PUDs, you guys go back and forth with the developer on and tweak through that stuff. Now, even on the 1 through 10 lots, those still have to go back through a planning process before, you just don't have to have everything called out as much detail on light industrial. So, but yes, there are some requirements in the DIO as far as setbacks, and I think there's berming requirements on. There's, you know, separation requirements on all of it, which we did not see berming there. I mean, that is, you know, that's pretty much open there. You have a fence. They have not done anything to hide that facility whatsoever.
But Senate Bill 98 addressed the electricity costs.
Yeah, so there's two things on electricity costs. Senate Bill 98 says that they have to pay, they have to pay those costs up front, so that they're, and even with water, we want them to pay cost up front. We want them to pay their utility bill up front. We don't want to be holding the bag at the end of the day if for some reason this does not materialize. City does not, I can't say the city does not have any money. I think we're paying, the bus was $3,500 per day and we're paying half that. We have time, we have that sort of stuff. We don't have, in Janet's world, they call it material costs. We don't have material costs in this project yet. But we want people to prepay before we do put material cost in anything, because we don't want to be, didn't come, something did not trigger. But that's what Senate Bill 98 says on electricity. They have to prepay. And then about 6 months ago, the Kansas Corporation Commission ruled, and they are the authority over Evergy, that 100% of the cost for any of these large load users have to be paid by the large load users. So that means transmission lines. That means everything else has to be paid for by the large load user. It cannot be put on the ratepayer.
Wasn't there something about 80%?
Yeah, what they do is they prepay, and I think it's for a 3-year period of time, 80% of their estimated electricity.
Annually?
And for 3-year period, 3-year block. So I think it's just 3 years, they pay what is estimated to be 80% of their electricity, so on a rolling basis. And I'm not an expert on Senate Bill 98, and Senator Argerbright got off the bus, so.
Well, there's restrictions in it.
Yes,
too.
there's restrictions. I mean, it's all set up.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a couple of cities in Georgia that, so in Kansas, there's 3 different ways to structure utilities. We are in Evergy is an investor-owned utility that's governed by the Kansas Corporation Commission. There's not a separate Emporia rate from a Wichita rate. We're in the same, district, and they can't change our rate because we're all in one.
Right.
Now, if we had the city of Emporia municipal utility like Osawatomie does, there's a little more risk because then your residents pay that. But we do not have our own utility, so those electric rates can't vary. And then you do have co-ops, and they're used to serving big distances at times, and they have the highest rate in the state because nobody's close to each other. Anything else?
There's a big difference between Pryor and us. They get all that sales tax.
Yes, well, Pryor's not getting sales tax from the facility. They're just getting just from the workers and stuff. That's where they're getting sales tax dollars.
Again, I know you are early enough in the process. This might not be fully solid yet, but what protections do you think will be added in for things like, pollution risks and water quality risks, in terms of how it would trickle back into the community from the digital campus?
So, what I can tell you about that is, under Kansas law, 2 things come into place. We are heavily regulated by Kansas Department of Health and Environment.
Okay.
And in Kansas, you're either going to have to discharge into our system, which means we regulate it. So right now, we have a number of users that discharge into our system today, and we do monthly testing to make sure they are in compliance. So whether we have a heavy metal user that we check for heavy metals, we have fats, oil, and grease, we have across the board users that we check their sewer, monthly random tests to make sure that they're in compliance.
Okay.
So if they're using city sewer, absolutely, we're going to test them on a regular basis, and it's a lot of trust, but verify, or not, or excuse me, it's not going to be a lot of trust and verify. It's going to be a lot of verify, because we need to check, we need to make sure it's not impacting our system with that. If they do what they have done in Pryor, where they treat their own sewage and discharge it, they will be separately regulated by KDHE, and you have to have what they call a point source discharge permit, and KDHE is going to test on a regular basis to ensure that they're in compliance if they do that. And that's the same thing that happens with us. We are monitored and audited by both KDHE and EPA on what comes out of our plant. So we have to make sure what goes into our plant is treatable so that we stay in compliance.
Does that discharge go through our system?
We don't know yet. I mean, in this case, Google treats their own,
Right.
but we don't know what they will want to do here yet. Tyson treated their own.
But if they treat their own, would it bypass our?
It would bypass ours. They would,
And we would depend on EPA and
and KDHE to regulate. And yeah, because
similar to what Tyson did.
yeah, Tyson, when they had the lagoons, EPA and KDHE were in charge of regulating those. The other thing I would point out is on regulations. We're not Oklahoma, Texas. Kansas has very robust regulations anytime you discharge any pollutant into the air. So we have a tree burner at our Woodburn Lands
Landfill.
at landfill. And, because it does cause pollutants, we have to do yearly monitoring of that. We have to send in quarterly reports on that. Way, under Kansas law, it is required that the CEO submit every one of those reports. So myself, as the CEO of the city of Emporia, I am required to go on, log on, and submit every one of those reports. I hate it, but that is how they have that system set up, so that they have, if we were polluting, there's no plausible deniability. It is, you filled out that report, and I don't know if it will be the plant manager in this case, or I don't know if the Google CEO would have to do it if that's what it was. But under Kansas law, that reporting has to be done, that monitoring has to be done. So we pay Terracon to monitor that for us and do all that. And I mean, it's pretty rigorous. I mean, Kansas is different than other. We are, there's a big split between southern states and northern states. Kansas, for a lot of things, we are a northern state, which means we have more regulations than southern states. Oklahoma is a southern state, so we are when it comes to regulations. Did I win? Any more questions? Roscoe.
You mentioned Costco. How optimistic are you that there would be additional business like that?
I don't know that we would see Costco, but I do think we will see retail growth as a part of this. I didn't point it out as we go through. If you drive through the main drag at Pryor's, we went down the street. Pryor's half the size of Emporia. It's a 4-lane highway, but it's not an interstate highway here. I saw more restaurants than we have in Emporia. I saw Chili's. I mean, I guess we have a Applebee's, but I saw more restaurants than we have. Completely anecdotal. I could be wrong, but hotels. I think you see that. I think you see retail growth. I can't promise you a Target. I can't promise you a Sam's. Probably tell you we won't get a Costco, but I think we will see growth. I mean, you add 2,000 construction workers continuously. I mean, we're talking about 10% population growth. That's going to cause a need for more retail just by itself.
What kind of time frame are we looking at if we get an end user?
So end user. So basically, we're going to go through this summer, going through all the initial stuff to get us to that end user point. I mean, if we have, we could have, and then it's like putting your house on the market. So Angela's right there. At that point, we put the house on the market, and we see who that end user is going to be. And it could sell. We could have multiple offers the first weekend that we have the house on, or it could sit for a little while, and it could take 3 to 4 months, or maybe the the media reports are out there that it is completely saturated, and we're done. If we're done. We're done. I mean, if you don't have an end user, project doesn't proceed. We de-annex the land, and it's done. But I can't tell you how long that end user part's going to be. I do think once you have a potential end user, it's going to take 60 to 90 days worth of negotiations, and then you're going to go through development agreement. Then you have to start your platting and your PUD and all those things. So I think I know how fast government works. I think you're 6 to 9 months before you could be there. And then once you're there, you're probably 2 years out before you see. So, 2029 is probably a right number. And then, the other thing is they need power. It's going to take a while to get power here.
I know Mark Schreiber talked about small nuclear reactors. Would that be a
So, and this is a conspiracy theory I've seen online too. All I know about small nuclear reactors is we had the discussion back last fall whether or not we are interested in a community. RDA and I think the city commission, the county commission voted to say, hey, we're interested in going through the process, at least talking about it. So that's kind of where we've been. We've had one more conversation with the Department of Commerce, and they said that they do like to be close to end user. I have not had a conversation with a nuclear power plant company. I don't believe anybody has had a conversation with them. It's just, we put up the flag last fall, so we're interested. And then, they do like to be close to end user, and that's just somebody from the Department of Commerce speculating, I guess. Those are the only two things I can tell you. I bet we have not had any direct conversation with them. That would have to go through a whole thing. If a nuclear power plant were to come, it would not be right adjacent to Emporia. It would be in Lyon County. And they would have to buy all the land and all that stuff, but I am not familiar with any of that undertaking. The most likely location for a small nuclear power plant right now is going to be Coffee County because they have the land for the facility. But I am speculating.
Yeah.
And I think they're probably truly 10 years from being there, too. Yeah.
What are the questions that you are asking?
Taylor Civic Leadership Institute, which is going on right now. Yeah, that is, we recommend that class. It is one of the favorite things that we have going at the city is our Civic Leadership Institute. I would recommend that anybody sign up for that. We're coming up a month. I think you can, no, it's on the other side. I would say, there's been a lot of people trying to row the right way. There have been a lot of questions. I do not have every question answered. I have concerns about projects. We want to address every legitimate concern out there. At the end of the day, if somebody just thinks AI is a digital prison, that's not something that we can do at the local level. But if we can talk about, demolition bonds, if we can talk about if they don't create jobs, what that penalty is, those are all things that we can do through a development agreement. All right. Anybody else? We're coming to Loves.